And thank you for joining us for the ACIS Difference webinar. I'm joined tonight by two educators who've traveled with ACIS previously and also traveled with a budget company before. They're here to share their experiences with both organizations, and we're going to examine where the differences lie. Teachers travel with ACIS because we offer the best possible value for the type of experience and product we provide. We're not the cheapest, where experience and quality and convenience suffer. We won't ever be, and we won't try to be, but what we pride ourselves on is delivering the best experience in the areas that teachers have told us time and again matter the most to them and to their parents, all at a great value. Our most loyal teachers are value conscious, not just price conscious. They have learned through experience that you get what you pay for, and sometimes that's not a very good thing. So we're going to start tonight with a poll. We just quickly want to find out who you've traveled with before, if you have traveled in the past at all. While we do that, I'm going to allow our panelists, Val and Mark, to introduce themselves. Val, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hi, my name is Valerie Aldridge, and I teach Spanish 2 honors and 4 honors at King's High School, which is located in Ohio. I've traveled 3 times with ACIS, and I decided to make the switch to ACIS because I really feel like they have the best tours, great tour guides, really good food, and great centrally located hotels.
Cool.
Hi.
Mark?
Sorry. Hi,
sure,
my name is Mark Pfeiffer. I teach Honors World History and Humanities at Lindbergh High School in South St. Louis, Missouri. I switched to ACIS 4 years ago, and I've gone with them on 2 trips. I switched because I really felt that if you're going to take a bunch of kids across the ocean to Europe for, really, thousands of dollars, you shouldn't be gambling with that money. You should make sure that you ensure the kids have a wonderful experience and, be able to say that this was the trip of a lifetime.
Okay, thank you, Mark. All right, let's share those poll results. Let's see, we have quite a few people who've traveled with ACIS and quite a few people who've never traveled at all, which is great, and a smaller percentage of people who have traveled with another travel company. Well, hopefully everyone will get something out of this tonight. If you have traveled with ACIS, maybe you'll learn something you didn't know before, which is always a great opportunity. Before we dive into the nitty-gritty, I just want to talk a little bit how the webinar will work tonight. We will run through everything we're going to talk about, and throughout the presentation, if you have questions, there's a place on your panel for you to ask questions. And we have someone, my colleague Patty Hutzler out in California, is online right now. She can answer any questions you have throughout the webinar. If you have a question that we think is valuable and everybody would want to hear, we will save it for the end. Patty will answer your question, but then we may review it with Mark and Val at the end so that everyone can benefit from the answer. All right, so let's start at the very beginning here. Getting a trip off the ground, we know it's a lot of work. For first-time teachers, they put quite a lot of time and thought into getting that first trip up and running. So I want to talk about the kind of support you've received from ACIS compared with companies you've traveled with before. For example, can you speak to the care, expertise, consistency, and just their willingness to be, to customize and their accessibility? Mark, why don't we start with you on this one?
Sure. I really think that ACIS is probably the best fit for me. I know that they're super flexible. They customize anything that you want. It's not just an itinerary that's on the computer that you print off. It's what you want for your group and what type of activities you want your kids to participate in. I don't know if I can say the same thing about previous tour companies that I used. I've used EF, and pretty much I had 7 tour consultants over probably, I think, 5 years. They didn't know my name. They didn't know anything about me. And I really felt that they were really just there to try to push me through an itinerary as quickly as possible with no really customization or anything for my kids. So, with our tour consultants at ACIS, Liz Terrell is my tour consultant. I've had her for the last 4 years. She's been phenomenal. I know the whole Chicago staff with Katie, Devin, and Karen. I know people in Boston. I know people in California, and it's not that I've gone out to ask for help from those people. It's that they've come to me with suggestions. They've emailed me and said, hey, I see you're doing this. What about this idea? And so ACIS has been just phenomenal and way better than the other tour companies I've used.
Thanks, Mark. Val, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I mean, I agree with so much of what Mark just had to say. I really think that what's special and unique about ACIS is they really take the time. You can tell that they take the time and they come up with really great, fun, but also, importantly, educational trips. You can see that they pay attention to the small details, and they take a trip overseas and they turn it into a fantastic lifetime memory for not just us, but especially for our students. And I agree. My tour consultant is out of Boston. Her name's Jill Federschneider, and she's just amazing. She's quick to respond to emails. She each time I'm ready for my next trip, she helps me pick out the perfect tour manager that she knows is going to fit my needs and have the right personality for myself and my students. And another really cool thing that I appreciate is she always calls me before my trip and after my trip to wish me luck and to see how it went. And it's just, you get that feel of authenticity, like you just know that they really care about every aspect of the trip.
Yeah, that's so nice. Liz and Jill are both so wonderful, as are all of our tour consultants who work with teachers. And, I think everybody really loves what they do, which adds so much to the experience. And we care so very much. And one of the great things about our team is how long people stay with ACIS. I've been with ACIS for 14 years, and I know Liz has been around for probably about that same amount of time. Jill too. So many people. We have so much experience as well. So it's not just that we care and we love what we do, but we actually have a lot of experience in what we do. And we really are all about building relationships. We work hard to be flexible, consistent, make sure that we're supporting teachers as they're building a travel program at their school. And I feel like I talk a lot about this, where we don't just want you to take one trip. We want, to help you build a program so that you can create your legacy of travel at your school. And we're really on a mission to change lives through travel. We just really get that your reputation's on the line, and we feel like our reputation's on the line too. So we want to make sure the trip is great. So all those phone calls, the back and forth with the Chicago office and Jill in Boston, what's it all about? And I think that this really touches on something that ACIS spends a lot of time on, especially with the teachers directly, and that's the details of a trip, because the details really are what make the trip go from being a good trip to an exceptional trip. So with that in mind, we're talking, what I'm really getting at here are itinerary logistics. So, how do we get from here to there? How many days in each place? Logistics aren't sexy, they're not cool, but they're really important. And we believe that we should leave nothing to chance. And we think that adds a lot of value to the experience of the trip. So how smoothly did your trips run with regard to time management and logistics? Mark, do you want to start this one?
Sure. I'm one of those type of travelers that I want to get up at like 7 o'clock in the morning and then really go until like midnight, and our kids beg us to go back to the hotels because they're so tired because we're doing so much. And we really push, we try to get in as many activities as possible, and the logistics of it are all, they run so smoothly. And from travel to the activities to the meals, everything's really well planned out. On our last trip, we went up church domes, we went up mountains, we climbed down mountains, we swam in the ocean, we swam in a mountain lake. We listened to renowned choirs, like pipe organs that were like 500 years old that have been played every year since they have been made. We went to Roman ruins. We went up the Eye of London. We went up the Eiffel Tower. I mean, it just like one thing after another. And our kids say, that they might have been on the tour for 4 days, and they say like, oh, it feels like we've been here for weeks already because we've done so much. Now, logistically, I know we want to compare it to these other tour companies. A few years ago, I took a group of 29 to Spain, France, and Italy. And whenever I went, they said, well, you know, you don't have enough people to have your own trip or your own group. And I was like, well, we have 29. And they said, well, we're going to have to add you. Well, then they added another group to us, and then another group to us. And by the end of it, they added a third group of kids to it. And we ended up with like almost 60 kids in our group, or 60 participants in the group. And it ended up taking like 45 minutes for just a bathroom break. So, you know, with ACIS, your kids experience so much more. And to me, it's one of the biggest differences is the kids have such a phenomenal time, and the logistics of it makes it so that those kids really, you know, they suck the marrow out of your trip, you know. So I love ACIS.
Yeah, that's awesome. We guarantee a private tour with 25. And if you register by our earliest registration deadline, we do it with 20. And you're right, it makes a huge difference. Something like that I can very safely say would never happen. A group of 29 would never have even one group added to them. I think I can very confidently say that. Val, how about you with regards to the itinerary and logistics?
Yeah, well, I actually have a similar story to Mark, so I'll start with that. When I was actually a chaperone with a different company, not ACIS, and same thing happened. We were a group of about 16 participants, I believe, and they added, I forget now if it was 3 more groups or 4 more groups, but it was almost 55 people when it was all said and done, and it's just a huge difference. And even like the first day, they made us go back to the airport twice to pick up other groups, and it just really ruined our first day. And so the first time I led my own group, when I decided to go with ACIS, I had 29 students actually, and so I got my own tour bus, and it was just such a difference. That first day, we got there at 8 a.m., and they had, you know, we planned all these things to do. It was considered, you know, we had this free time or whatever, but we sat down and we decided what we wanted to do. And if you ask my kids, they would never say it was a quote-unquote free day, because our tour manager really helped us find meaningful and cheap activities to do. And so ACIS is just really good at creating great itineraries, and then when we do have the free time, the tour managers are just really good at talking with you, sitting down with you on that first day, trying to figure out what you would like to add on. If you don't have your own ideas, they have them for you, and they just try to do it in a cheap kind of way for you so that everybody can do as many activities as possible and everybody just has a great time. And I just have to add, during one of our free time, my tour manager, Julie Gilders, from my 2012 trip, it was after dinner, and she's like, hey guys, the Euro Cup, which is soccer, is going on right now. After dinner, why don't we, you know, take the metro and go down to the Real Madrid Stadium, and we can, you know, watch the soccer game on the big screens. And it was something I wouldn't have thought of on my own, and she just made such great use of our time, and the kids just absolutely loved it. So that's just one example of how they help us, and they aren't trying to make money off of it once you're there.
Yeah, that's really fun. That's, you know, being immersed in the culture, taking advantage of the moment. That sounds like a lot of fun. So cultural connections, what you're sort of referencing right now, is something that ACIS offers on all its trips. They're interactive activities designed for students to immerse themselves in the local culture. I know both of you have experienced them. Things like them, you know, things like cultural connections happen every day on a trip, but these are fun educational ways for ACIS to get the kids a little bit more involved. So I'd love to hear from you if you felt that our cultural connections, the activities you participated in, enhanced the educational experience of your students. And did you experience anything similar with your previous tour providers? Mark, why don't you start us off?
All right. Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I was really hesitant about the cultural connections because I really think that students are really good at smelling out if something is inauthentic, like if they think it's faked. And so I kind of thought maybe our kids wouldn't like it. And then when we started showing up to these cultural connections, I found out that our kids loved them. I mean, on the tours that I've gone on with ACIS, we've done a painting lesson in Provence. We've cooked in Paris. We made perfume in southern France. We learned how to play an alpenhorn in Switzerland. We went to the ceremony of the Keys in the Tower of London. And in each one of those cultural connections, you end up talking with people who are from that culture, and they're young people who are fun, and they're just as excited to meet your kids as your kids are to meet them. And so it ends up being a very authentic experience, and the kids love it. So I highly suggest, and one of the things I didn't know starting off with ACIS, because EF would never allow you to just ask questions like, oh, can I add this, can I add this? ACIS is like, they'll have a list of cultural connections that you can add on, and they'll tell you the price of things. They're somewhat cheap, and your kids end up having a blast. So I highly suggest asking your tour consultant, what are some of the cultural connections that we can do in this city, because they are so much fun.
Yeah. Well, we do offer, we have multiple ones in every city, but we can only include on every itinerary so many. So where you have some free time, you definitely can add them if that's something you're interested in doing and having more of them. Or if you want to change the one you're doing to something you've heard someone else enjoyed, we're happy to talk to you about that too. That speaks to that flexibility again. But we want you to have the trip you want to have and have the students doing things that you think they would enjoy. Val, I know you've done some cultural connections.
Yes, I have, and they're a lot of fun. They really are, and there's just so many to choose from. When we were in Barcelona, we got to do a really cool mosaic workshop where we had just seen a lot of Anthony Gaudi's famous works in Barcelona, like the Sagrada Familia, and so they got to see his mosaics in those, or featured in those buildings and his different architecture. So then when we sat down and actually made it, the kids were like, wow, this was so hard, and how did he do that? Like, he had so much of it. So they really appreciated his work that much more. We had food challenges. We did a bike ride tour. I've done the cooking lesson a couple times, and the fun thing about that is I've got students back in my classes now, and they're like, hey, when we do that food project this year, can we make what we made that day? Like, they want to make the tortilla española and the different things that they actually got to make while in Spain. We did flamenco lessons, which were so much fun. I feel like ACIS has they have this magic ability to get the students to get the participants, I guess, to do anything, anything that you want them to do, like dancing. That's something that's hard to get the students to do in your own classroom. And so I always wish I could just bottle up that magic and bring it back home with me so that they would do it for me in my classroom as well. But hey, at least I get to see them do it there. But my actual favorite.
Sorry, Val, I was just going to say I love to see the sort of, big football players out flamenco dancing on the dance floor in Spain. I think it's a lot of fun. You're right. They just, they're willing to do it. They're there. They want to, take part in the moment and be part of it, and it's really, really fun.
Yes.
Really fun. Sorry, Val, did you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, I was just going to say one more thing. My favorite cultural connection that we did was we were able to go to a bullfighting farm. And so we got to go to the farm, and we sat down and had a great lunch. And then they took us out on like a little wagon, took us out to see the bulls. And then we came back in, and they taught the kids how to bullfight and just talked all about the tradition and the cultural aspect of it. And then the cool thing was the kids enjoyed it so much that we decided to add on a bullfight when we got back to Madrid that night. And so it was just really neat because they truly got to make that cultural connection because they had just seen and heard about it, and then they got to go witness it for themselves, and it was just a really neat moment. I know that they enjoyed it much more since they had just learned so much about it firsthand.
Yeah, that bull farm is one of the most popular cultural connections. It's a lot of fun. I am dying to do that one myself.
I'm going to start adding it on. I didn't realize I could just add them on, so I am now. I learned something.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
So now we're going to move on and talk a little bit about hotels. As someone who frequents TripAdvisor, Yelp, I always take reviews online, with a grain of salt because I feel like everyone has their own ideas about what's important in a hotel. So I want to ask each of you, what's in a hotel for you, and how do your experiences with ACIS and other companies compare with regards to hotels? Val, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Man, when I was a chaperone on that other trip with EF, actually, we went to 4 different countries, and every city that we went to, our hotel was between 30 to 40 minutes outside of the city, every single one. And that just made it so difficult because, we would get on the bus, and they'd take us to dinner, and then we would get rushed through dinner so that we could get back on the bus before the bus driver went over his time limits, and we'd get back to the hotel, which was, once again, 40 minutes outside of the city. We'd try to walk around and see if we could do something, and there was just nothing around. So for me, that was a huge, major disappointment because every single night, our nights had to end at 9 o'clock. And like Mark said, I want to be out till midnight and soaking in everything that city has to offer. And so with ACIS, the best thing is every single city, you are 100% centrally located in the middle of the city. And they say that, but it's just true. In Barcelona, we were right off Las Ramblas, so we just had to walk down a block or two, and we're on one of the most famous streets in Spain. And so it's easy for the kids to find their way to and from between lunch and dinner and whatnot. And it just makes it so nice because, going back to dinner, this time with ACIS, we walk to dinner. We get to sit down, enjoy our meal, soak in everything that, talk about everything that happened that day, and we're not rushed. And then we get to leave. We get to walk, since we didn't take the bus, we're on our own at this point, so we walk around. We get to see the beautiful buildings that are lit up at night, and we just really get to enjoy what the city has to offer. And for me, that's honestly one of the biggest differences, one of the most important differences for myself between ACIS and the other travel companies.
Yeah, I agree. Seeing a city at night is such a huge part of the culture, especially in Spain. And I just think that it would be such a shame to miss that, and for the students to miss that. I mean, in Spain, most Spaniards aren't even eating dinner till 10 o'clock, right? So,
exactly.
I think that, you would miss out on that whole side of it. Mark, what about you? How did the hotel quality and location affect your experience?
All of my experiences mirror Val's so much whenever it comes to using other tour companies. I went on that trip with from Spain and to Italy, and besides just the bus time from city to city, but from the bus time from our hotel to the city center, we were an hour outside of Rome. We were actually staying at a hotel where Romans went to vacation. So we were supposed to be visiting Rome, and we're out in the middle of nowhere. And it was over an hour away. And then whenever you would drive in, we get stuck in traffic, and then now that hour turns into an hour and a half. And by the end of it, I ended up counting up all the extra time that we were on the bus from just hotel to city or city to hotel. And it was 15 waking hours. Like 15 waking hours, that's a whole day that our kids missed just sitting on a bus. So, with ACIS, you end up with a hotel right in the middle of the city. I was in Paris, and, we'd walk out the door, and the Arc de Triomphe was literally the next block up. When we were in Rome, the Colosseum was 2 blocks away. I mean, like, the kids walk out the door, and they're just, engulfed by the culture that the cities have. So, the location is huge, and I heard it over and over again with budget companies where they say, a hotel is just where you sleep. They say it. I probably heard it 10 times from different people in those other tour companies. And it's not just where they sleep. The quality of the hotel is a big deal. And with ACIS, you get 3 or 4-star hotels. And to be honest, I can't tell the difference between a 3-star and a 4-star in Europe because really all the hotels that we stayed in were excellent. The people that worked at the hotel were really nice to our kids. The beds and the rooms themselves are excellent. It's not like that room where you can hear what's going on in the room next to you, and the bed is all creaky and the mattress is 10 years old or whatever. The hotels that ACIS use they're all top notch, and it does turn out to be more than just where you sleep. The hotel is really important to keeping the morale of your trip up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a good night's sleep it's not just where you sleep, but a good night's sleep in a nice hotel in the center of the city, I think it really does matter. I mean, I know it matters to me personally when I travel, but I think if I had a group of kids, this window of time you have in Europe is so small. And 15 waking hours, that's, as a parent, I think I would be really disappointed in that, that lost time. That's money out the window, right? It's time gone that they could have been experiencing the culture and having real experiences. We just recently have really ramped up our our sample hotel map on the website, and it's wonderful. And we have an example of it right up here, and I just want to mention it because you can just go on our website and see where all of our hotels are located and where the famous landmarks are. It's a wonderful resource if you're, even if you're, whether you're an experienced ACIS group leader or a first-time ACIS group leader, I think it's a great tool. You can check it out and, you know what, make a request. That's something that ACIS does. We want to know where you really want to be. And, we can't always meet all of your requests because, there's conferences in cities and different things happen and, not every hotel is always available when you need it. But make a request. That's the kind of customization, and that's how, we work. We want to know what you want and exactly what type of hotel you want and where you want it to be. That will help us make sure your trip is the trip you want. So our hotels provide lovely breakfasts, and I do want to talk a little bit about food. So all educational travel companies out there, they say breakfast and dinner daily, sort of like the hotel is just where you sleep, right? So who knows what that means. So it can be hard to differentiate online or in a catalog or even just when someone says that, what does that mean? So what I'd love to know from each of you is, having traveled with both companies, could you taste the difference in the food?
Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah, nice.
I know. That's awful. I'm sorry.
I totally can taste the difference. I read online, and I don't know exactly how true this is, but they said that EF's average dinner cost is somewhere around €6, and ACIS's average is 18 euros. And so, I mean, if you think about where you could, if you were, €6 is like what, maybe $10, something like that. What you could eat around your own house for $10, that's not that much. But 18 euros, 27 something bucks, something like that, 25 bucks. That's a pretty nice dinner. And I'm huge on food. I think not only do the kids love it, but it's also a big morale booster. The amount of food that you get is important. And with ACIS, you really can, that pun was funny, taste the difference. But there is a big difference. I mean, the breakfasts are a full buffet. They have American-style food there with it, but you can also try the authentic, whatever country you're in, their authentic breakfasts are there too. So, if we were in London and there was like the roasted tomatoes and the roasted mushrooms and things like that, so our kids could try things, and I make it a big game to like put stuff on my plate and make everybody have to go eat it if they've never eaten it before. And then the dinners, they're phenomenal. They're at authentic restaurants that are amazing. The food there is authentic to the region that you're traveling in, and to be honest with you, like I was in Nice, France. I almost said Nice, France, with EF, and we had a meal that was our tour guide called Spurky, and I wasn't really sure what it was, but whenever it showed up, Nice is the culinary center of the world, and it showed up to be like instead of Spam, it was Spurky. It was like this gelatinous goo that had been like pressed meat and looked more like dog food. And I was trying to, and kids were like, this is disgusting. I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I put it in my mouth. I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. So I ended up having to buy our group pizza that night. Like, it came out of my pocket to buy pizza for our group because the food was so horrific. So, I went to, when I was in Spain, I had hamburgers 2 meals in a row from EF. Hamburgers, that's not authentic. That's not what you want when you go to Spain. So whenever it comes to food, there is such a huge difference between the budget companies and ACIS.
Yeah, that Spurky that story made my stomach turn a little bit. I care a lot about the food when I travel. I feel like it's such a huge part of the culture and such a part of the experience. And, we definitely put a lot of time and thought into the meals we choose. Val, how about you? What was your experience with the food?
This is crazy because I feel like my experiences are so similar to Mark's. Like, it just blows me away. But I'll start with, when I was with EF, I think we were in Vienna, Austria, and the kids were super hungry after a long day, and we sit down, and we had a hot dog, not even with the bun, just a hot dog and soggy fries. I'm like, wow, like here we're in a great country. We should be eating Wiener Schnitzel or something delicious, and that's what we ate. And aside from it being just a hot dog and soggy fries, it was a very small portion as well. And that just kept happening throughout that trip. And on that trip, there was a lot of high school boys, and they were just starving. So every night they would go out and they'd get more food after. So they were wasting more time and wasting more money. And I just can't say enough great things about the food with ACIS. As Mark mentioned, we first sit down for breakfast, and it's always a buffet type. It's a buffet spread, and as he said, there's food that is authentic to the region. Like for me, I take my kids to Spain a lot, so there's the jamon serrano and tortilla española and delicious things that they serve for breakfast. And then they've got their cereal and fruit and pastries and coffee and just everything, all these different kinds of juices. And so there's just so many things for kids to choose from, especially our picky eaters. And once again, I'm just like Mark. I'll actually walk around to my kids and I'll be like, hey, did you try the tortilla española? They're like, no. I'm like, just try it, because if you don't like it, you didn't pay for it, or you have to go out and physically pay at that moment, And so it's a great opportunity to get them to try food. And the food, like, they get so much good food that it holds them over. When it comes time for lunch, nobody's had the need to go out and buy a snack in between, which I think is amazing, because high school kids eat a lot. And then dinner, I just love the dinner. It's always 3-course meals. We sit down, we'll have some type of starter, whether it's a soup or a salad or a type. In Spain, there's tapas, something like that. And then we'll have a great meal, some type of meat and some type of potato normally and stuff, sometimes paella, and then we always have dessert. I remember the first meal, they're like, Senorita, we're getting dessert. I'm like, guys, you're getting dessert every single night. And they're like, oh, my gosh, I love this. So, I mean, not only is it good food, but it's a lot of food. And once again, kids don't have to go waste their time after to sit down and buy some more food, because they are satisfied. And when they're satisfied, it works well for us. It's much easier.
I like how Mark said that it's a morale booster, and I see that with kids. Even with my own kids, they're falling apart. Things are falling apart. I feed them a little bit of food, and everybody's, oh, yay, we're all perky again. And I think on a trip, these kids are, we offer very full days. They're on their feet all day. They probably are doing a lot more walking than they normally do. So having a good meal at the end of the day is important, and we know that. We actually spend a ton of time on meals and restaurants. We, twice a year, evaluate every restaurant, meal choices. We read all the teacher and student evaluations. So we put a lot of effort into providing high-quality, authentic dining experiences. I think I'll call it that. I just came up with that. It sounds fancy.
Nice.
Like when you were talking about experiences, I mean, that is, like, you talked about cultural experiences before, and then you talk about, like, the dining as being part of the cultural experience. Like, one of the things I really like, and it just crossed my mind when you said that, is that those dine-around vouchers that ACIS offers. So they're like these vouchers that you give out to your students, and on the voucher it gives you a list of restaurants that will accept the voucher, and your kids can go off, in some cities anyway, your kids can go to restaurants on their own. They can order what they want. My kids love them, and the first time I used them, my kids loved them, and so from then on out, every time I'm at a city that has the dine-in vouchers, I ask Liz to sign us up for it, because the kids love them, and like I said, they're actually ordering in whatever language they're in, and they love them. So I highly suggest, if you use ACIS, ask about the dine-around vouchers.
Yeah, the dine-around vouchers are so fun. And, like, for example, in Rome, I love the Rome ones because it comes with a little map, and it's just ACIS restaurants. They're very ACIS-specific vouchers, and it's right around the Piazza Navona. So it's a great, safe area for the kids to explore at night. And, you can rest easy that they're all right in this one neighborhood, out experiencing things on their own. So it's that, opportunity for them to be independent, but not so independent that you have no idea where they are or what they're doing. They're in a restaurant that's going to treat them well because they work with us and we have a relationship with them. I agree. The dine-around vouchers are so fun. And honestly, when I'm overseas for work, I pick up some of the dine-around vouchers just because then I know I'm eating somewhere that is good, and we all eat at the ACIS restaurants as well because we have a relationship with them. You're going to get a great meal. It's really nice. So that's a lot of fun. I'm glad you mentioned that, Mark. So I want to move on and talk about the tour managers. Tour managers,
Yay!
Yay! Anyone who's done a trip, whether with ACIS or another company, knows that the tour managers really make or break the trip. They're what the kids are going to talk about in 5 or 10 years. They are amazing. Tour managers run the logistics of the trip. They provide the educational content of the trip. They really set the tone for the whole experience. So I want to hear from you guys if you've had what your experiences have been with ACIS tour managers, and if you've seen any differences between the ones you've had with ACIS and the ones you've had with previous companies. Val, why don't you start us off here, because I know you've loved your tour managers.
Yes, I love them. Yeah, I've just been so blessed, and I've just had the most fantastic tour managers. My students have absolutely loved them. I've absolutely adored them, and I just feel like you said, they truly make or break the trip. And so I'm always nervous when I used to be nervous. I'm confident now because I know ACIS never steers me wrong, but I used to get nervous that first initial meeting. So I feel like within the first 10, 15 minutes, you can tell how they're going to be, and I've just been blessed. On my other trip, I remember we had this tour manager, and the students just didn't really care for him. In fact, they got quite annoyed with him. He came across quite standoffish and even a little bit cocky, and it just really made it hard for those students to relate to him. And so it just didn't set a good tone, and there wasn't good morale for that. With my ACIS tour managers, each one that I've had, they've really taken the time to sit down, get to know my student's name, and talk with them and form that bond as well. On my trip this past summer, my 2014 trip, my tour manager, her name was Elena, and she was fantastic. She surprised us on our final night, and she wrote us a speech. We were standing in front of the Royal Palace, and we were all sad and sentimental because it was the last night, and she just smiled and all of a sudden was like, guys, I wrote you guys a speech. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is adorable. So she stood there, and she talked about the memories that she'd experienced with us. She started at the very beginning at the airport when she initially met us, and then she ended with that final night. And I mean, my students and I, we were all holding back tears, and well, my tears came through. And I mean, we just listened to her tell us about our trip through her eyes, and to me, it was just really, really special. The other thing that just stands out to me, and it's so amazing, is how much information they know. Well, they make great use of time. Whenever we do have to travel on the bus to the next city or whatnot, they get on the microphone and they're telling us all about the history and the culture and all that kind of stuff about the next city. And it just baffles my mind the amount of information that they know. And then I know when we are around the city doing tours, anytime I ask questions, they almost always know the answer to my random questions. And if they don't know it, they find out for me right away. So I just think it's really impressive how much they know. And I know we don't have much time, but the last thing I want to say about this is they're just so helpful, too. Like, I know this past summer, like, I have a huge wish list. I want my kids to get through everything they can while I'm there. And my students wanted to go to a bullfight, and so I planned it out so we'd be there on a Sunday when it's offered. And the website said that the cheapest tickets were 25 euros. Well, Elena was not having it. She said, 25 euros, that's way too much. And so she made some phone calls, and she came back and said, all right, Val, I got you tickets for 15 euros. And I just thought that was so nice because she didn't have to do that. I didn't request her to do that. She did that because she wanted us to get a better price. And there she saved the kids, 12, 13 bucks a piece just for that activity. And that happened numerous times. So they're just fantastic.
That's awesome. Elena is a wonderful tour manager. And,
oh, fantastic.
I love how our tour managers really are in it for the same reasons we are, that that passion
Yes.
for travel and sharing the experience and really educating the students and showing them something new and teaching them new things. And the tour managers, Elena giving you that speech at the end, I know that they genuinely love what they do and that they walk away from each group feeling like, wow, this was such a wonderful experience for me as well. And being able to impart that experience, I think, is one of the greatest things about ACIS tour managers. Mark, how about you?
definitely.
I have the same experiences as Val with our tour guides, our tour managers. I mean, the emotional connection that they make with the kids is amazing. And on our last day, our kids are crying because they're leaving. We had Libby Lawrence this year, and she was so great. I had asked for an energetic person. I didn't expect to have as much energy as she did. She was amazing. On the last day, our boys went around and bought roses for her and brought roses.
Aww.
She gave us her email address, and there are still kids on my trip that are emailing her like once a week, giving her updates and asking her questions. I mean, she was amazing. I tell our kids that we had our own personal Mary Poppins because she was so great. Other tour guides I've had, Marcus Stuckelberger, he's amazing. He's from Switzerland, but he lives in France. Just the stories that he would tell the kids and the stories that all the tour managers say, I would say they make kids feel sophisticated. They make kids feel like what they're doing is important and what they're doing is making their lives fuller. And that's the thing that I love about the tour managers of ACIS, which I didn't really feel that way with other tour companies. That idea that the kids are living a better life because they're on these trips and they're meeting these people and experiencing what they're experiencing. So I love the tour guides. I have nothing bad to say about them.
That's great. Thank you so much. I love hearing that. We have a pretty extensive training for the tour managers, and we also are so lucky that so many of our tour managers stay with us for many, many years. I mean, Libby Lawrence, Elena, Marcus Stuckelberger, those are tour managers who've been with ACIS for, 15 to 20 years, some of them. And we're so lucky to have these people as part of our team. And I know as a salesperson, it was, you work with someone on every detail of an itinerary, and then the trip day comes and you put them on a plane and you cross your fingers. It's kind of like, oh, I hope they, get that same, I hope, their tour manager loves you as much as I love you and gives you that same experience, and can provide all these things that you and I have worked together to ensure the students have a great time. And then, you're passing that torch to someone who it's so wonderful to have the confidence in our tour managers and to be able to pass that torch and know that you're going to arrive and be in the best possible hands, and that your students are going to be crying at the end of the trip, not for any other reason other than not wanting to leave and not wanting to leave that person. We put a lot of thought into matching tour managers with groups as well. I know that that's something that is sort of a very internal thing, but we spend a lot of time thinking about your personality, what types of tour manager you've requested. Mark just said I wanted someone energetic. Libby definitely fits that request. But we do this is why we take requests, so that we can make sure that we are customizing your experience, and knowing that you wanted someone energetic, someone else might really want someone who is a native speaker. That's something we'll take a request for. We have plenty of tour managers who, were born in France and speak French. So that kind of detail and attention to detail, I think really highlights our tour managers and allows our tour managers to be great because we put them with the right people. It's that matching system that really is great. All right, I know we could talk about tour managers all night, but I want to switch gears here and talk about something less exciting, the dreaded travel woes. When things go wrong, which they do when you travel, it's inevitable, but I think it really speaks to the nature of an organization to talk about how the company handled when things went wrong. So, for example, like a travel delay, a broken down bus, a lost passport. Do either of you have a story or an experience you'd like to share about something going wrong and what happened with each organization?
Well, yeah, I think I repressed a memory until I started thinking about this webinar, because with EF one time we had a very big group. It was over 43 participants. We were flying back to the United States, and we had a layover in Detroit. And the layover was a night layover, like we had to spend the night there. And so it had been a long day. We'd already flown into, I think we'd flown to Germany, and then from Germany to like, I want to say Newark, and then Newark to Detroit, and then we were supposed to spend the night. So our kids were exhausted. They hadn't eaten anything in probably 6 or 7 hours, and we go to the hotel, and there were no reservations for us. And so it's 11 o'clock at night, no reservations at all, 43 kids starving to death. And I don't know how many people are from Detroit that are listening. I have no problem with Detroit at all. But where we were in Detroit seemed like a pretty dangerous area, and we couldn't like go out and get food or anything. And so EF, it took them probably 3 hours to get things settled away or squared away. We ended up having to take a shuttle to another hotel. We got to the hotel at 2:30 in the morning. We had our group got split into 2 groups on the way home. The first group had to be back at the airport at 6, so they were going on 2 more hours of sleep. I mean, it was horrible. And when we got home, the EF lady was just like, "Well, you know, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. That's bad." And I was just like, "Wow, that's yeah, like that it didn't even seem like the apology was sincere." So
that you were supposed to have a hotel that night, right? That was planned.
We were already we were taken to a hotel that we were supposed to have rooms in, and the lady was like, "No, we don't have your reservation. We're booked." And so I was like, "Oh, what do we do now?" And you know, like
that's
I said,
a double whammy.
Yeah, it was horrific. And like I said, I repressed. Like I tried to forget all about it because it was so bad. You know, with ACIS, we were flying from St. Louis to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta over to Europe. And there was a storm over St. Louis, and it ended up delaying our flight. So we ended up missing our connecting flight from Atlanta to Europe. And so we ended up spending the night in Atlanta, and you know, it wasn't ACIS's fault or anything. It was all, like I said, the weather. And then when we showed up in Italy, and Marcus Stuckelberger met us as we were coming out of customs, and he just said, "You know what? You guys have had a pretty rough time. Let's turn it around right now." And just his attitude right away made our kids liven up. You know, kids have been crying on the airplane on the way over because they felt that they had missed a day. And right away, Marcus is like, "Let's do this. Let's have a better time." And you know, throughout that tour, he ended up getting us a couple extra things added onto our tour, which made things so much better. Our kids had more experiences, you know, and so ACIS, you know, it really, what I think it does is it rectifies things, rectifies the situation right away, makes the kids feel like they're appreciated, and that you know, that ACIS cares for them. And you know, I keep saying like, "Oh, I'm a big ACIS fan," but it's because of some of the horrific things that I went through with other tour companies that I really love ACIS. So, you know, I expect everyone, you know, if you haven't traveled with ACIS before, you're going to go and you're going to get on the computer and you're going to go to reviews and check all the other, you know, travel companies, check their reviews, and you will hear online the exact same stories that me and Val have told. And whenever you go to ACIS, you'll see the exact reviews and the exact same things that Val and I have told you. You know, that you pay for what you get. So.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think, you know, when things go wrong, it's really, it is one of those things. It's really hard to explain that difference to a teacher. I can remember when I was a salesperson trying to, you know, tell a first-time teacher, you know, when things fall apart, guess what? We'll be there. But, you know, we are there, and I have been on the 24-hour phone call, you know, whether it was blizzards in the Northeast or the Icelandic volcano that stranded groups all over Europe. As a salesperson, you know, as someone working for ACIS with teachers, it always was so reassuring and wonderful to work for a company that I could always feel like I knew would do the right thing. We always make the right decision to ensure that students and teachers get the experience they want, and that we do something to make up for it. You know, make sure that you're happy at every turn, and that those students feel like, you know what, you missed a day, but you know what, we're going to make the most of the time we have and take advantage of every opportunity that comes our way. So thank you for sharing that. And I know, Mark, you and I had talked before, and you had said that with other companies you felt like you were gambling with the kids' experience. And I think that what you just said, that totally, that just reminded me of that, because, that hotel, which was already booked into your flights, which obviously was not ideal to begin with, but then to not have that there and to be, you were scared for those kids at that moment. I'm sure you were thinking, what am I going to do right now? I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I have no food, and I have no room. So thanks for sharing that story.
Hungry high school kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like we've really done a good job tonight covering what most people want to hear. So I'd love to hear from you guys just what you think are the biggest and most important differences between the two companies, or the companies you've traveled with in ACIS. Val, do you want to go?
Like, Liz, sure, definitely. Yeah, I feel like we've covered so much of the true main reasons for me. And just to recap on that, the location and quality of the hotels is a huge one for me. The quality of the meals is right up there. The friendliness and education of our tour managers, and really making the trip about the students and their wants and needs. Yeah, I mean, those are my main things. Those are the things that make me so passionate about ACIS.
I'm totally in agreement that what you just said about like making it the kids, putting the kids first and their needs and what they want, and then also, making it such an educational and fun experience. ACIS, you talk about the amount of we've talked about how much time that you save by being in the hotels where you are, the food that you get, just the experience as a whole. I look at some of my students that I took on trips, 10 years ago, and look at the experience that they get now because I'm using ACIS. It's such a huge difference. So yeah, I totally agree with Val about there's so much about ACIS that is so much better than the other tour companies. It's you for your kids, you should be taking into account that ACIS is better than everyone else.
All right, thank you. That's awesome. We're coming toward the end here, and I know what our listeners are thinking right now. They're thinking what you just said. ACIS is way better, yay! But I think what they're also thinking is that their students can't afford an ACIS trip. So I'm going to ask the million-dollar question. How did you make the jump from a budget company to ACIS and keep your group intact? And also, any tips you could throw in for recruiting would be, I'm sure, welcome. Mark, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. I would say, I try to start early. I start 2 years in advance. We start recruiting kids from their freshmen so that they go after their junior year. They have 2 years to fundraise. They have 2 years to get a job. They have 2 years for their family to save up. I want kids to be able to fundraise as much as possible. So we make a lot of, I make a lot of personal connections to fundraising companies around my school, and I make sure that I know somebody's name there, and I call them and say, what can you do for us? And those little personal connections that you have with those people end up making it so that the fundraiser is better. Maybe they do more work for you. Maybe they give you a little bit more money. Maybe they remember you from last time. So, make those personal connections with the fundraising. But I also think that if you show parents from the very beginning that the value that they're getting and why you're using ACIS instead of a budget company, I think it speaks a lot to the parents care about their kids too. And if you say, this is why we're using it, because it's safer, it's funner, it's better, it's more educational, parents will be more willing to pay a little bit more in order to ensure that their kids have the best experience.
What about you, Val?
Okay, well, sure. Well, I made the jump because I helped chaperone an ACIS trip in 2009, and after that trip, once you've seen the best, you just can't go back. And so I just couldn't imagine using another company. And as far as recruiting, I'm very upfront with my parents from the get-go. I tell them that ACIS is more expensive. It's more expensive, but I really explain the reasons why, which I really hope we touched on this evening. And and I just explain those things to them. And being a teacher that I am, I make them a handout also, and I highlight all the things about the centrally located hotels and the great food and the great tour managers and all that kind of stuff, and so they actually go home with that information. As far as recruiting your future participants, I strongly recommend making a handout maybe like that, or something like that. And actually, one of my best selling points, I think, is I bring students in for the most recent trip or whatever, the previous trip, and I have them talk at the beginning. And then after that, I normally make a DVD with photos and music from the most recent trip so they can see what the trip actually looked like. And then the last thing I do is I go through the itinerary that I've chosen for the future trip, and I go day by day, and I show them pictures of that city and tell them exactly what we'll be doing. And I try to use all my own pictures if I have them, but if it's a new city that I've not yet been to, then I look online and I include pictures there, because I just feel most people are visual learners and visual people, so once they see those pictures, you know, they're sold. Like, I've had parents at the end of my meeting write me a check. I'm like, wow, already? And so, I mean, just the more excitement that you show and the more passion that you have, they see that and they know that's real, and it makes them, you know, trust you, and it helps them make that decision of allowing their son or daughter to come with you on such an amazing trip.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, and I think, you know, showing that value and why you're choosing ACIS, because, you know, you want to make sure that their students have that once-in-a-lifetime experience, because for a lot of students, this may be, you know, their first trip overseas or the only big trip overseas they're going to take, and, you know, if they're going to pay a couple $1,000s, it may as well be the best possible experience. We do a lot at ACIS to help promote trips, to help teachers through the recruiting process. We provide a PowerPoint. We have done a couple webinars on how to host a recruitment meeting, how to grow your group, ideas on using social media, our student ambassador program. We have a lot of different ways to support teachers. So if anyone is interested, we have an ACIS YouTube channel. You can find a lot of our resources there, as well as on ACIS.com. Also, once you are an ACIS group leader, you'll have your own trip site and access to our resources and guides right on your own group site on how to grow your group and how to deal with things that come up. But I think that what Mark and you are both saying is that, you know, you have a travel program at your school. You know, there's an expectation. Mark, every 2 years or every year you run a trip, and your students know they have 2 years to plan. And that really speaks to that, building your legacy of travel at your school. So I want to ask you guys something about if you could go back in time and say to yourself, you know, something before you chose an educational travel company. What would you say to yourself, or maybe to any teacher for the first time thinking about leading a trip? What would you do?
Well, if I had to start over again, if I had to start over again, I would just make sure that I looked through the reviews and that I just ultimately chose a trip that's best for the students. And I would just say skip all the other ones and go straight with ACIS, because it just truly provides the best educational experience overall. So I would have started with ACIS.
Yeah, I would, you know, I'm a history teacher, so I like documentation. I like it whenever there's evidence, you know, sources. So I'd go back and show them the emails of my students from the last 12 years and show them the emails that I got from parents before using other budget companies, where they say, you know, thank you for taking our kid on the trip, or thank you for, you know, being such a nice person on the trip, or whatever. And now, you know, the emails I get now are things like, they say, like, you know, your trip changed the way my kid sees life. Their whole mentality of what it means to be a human have changed. You know, these are like the types of things I get now. It's weird how the big difference in the trips is that you know, the experiences that the kids get are so much more authentic and, like I said, sophisticated, and so and the parents can tell, because the kids come back changed, and they're changed for the better.
That's so sweet. I love that. And you know what? I love when we get letters from students, or we do a student spotlight or a parent spotlight on our blog, and we hear those stories, or we hear stories of students who go on an ACIS trip and then, go on to live this international life, or just how it has changed them. Even sometimes in small ways, the student who went on the trip and didn't really know any students, and make so many new friends, and that to me, it's not just the cultural things, but it's such a personal thing for them, that they change in so many different ways. It's really exciting. So thank you so much for sharing that. I know we can't go back in time, but I'm glad you guys are enjoying your trips now and that your students are seeing life in a new way. We can't ask for much more than that. So now we're going to take a little bit of time to answer a couple questions. So we have a few here, and the first one is, I have a ton of EF points, and I don't want to lose them. What type of loyalty program does ACIS have? So ACIS does offer, we offer global conferences along with other options, and right now we are in the process of building for, I believe it's 2016 or 17, a more advanced type of loyalty program. But we do, if you have EF points, you can trade them in for our global conferences. That is definitely something we can look into. Just call your tour consultant, and we can match the equivalent of whatever EF was offering with the equivalent of an ACIS global conference. Let's see. Another question is, I've had really bad flight experiences with long multiple connections. There's no direct flights to Europe from our city, but I definitely need better flights. How does ACIS handle flight bookings? So we have an in-house team of a group reservation flight team, and they are constantly searching for the best routing on the best airline from your city on your dates. And we work with you. We take requests. If you have a certain airline you don't want to travel on, we will take any requests you have and note it in your file. We also send out surveys about your flight before you depart, about what you'd be interested in, and we also will send you a survey after you return to see if you liked your routing, so that for the future we can make sure that we match you with a good airline and with the routing you would like. See, are there any? Okay. One other right here. Hold on. I used to travel with EF, but then switched to NETC because I wanted a better quality trip, and I wanted the LEAP activities. Now that they've become World Strides, I'm not as happy. Can you talk about the differences between ACIS and World Strides? ACIS, I would say, is, I think we've talked a lot about how flexible we are, how we're able to customize. We really welcome small groups and do a wonderful job treating everybody as our most important client. And I think that type of flexibility and specific tailored service really speaks to the kind of organization we are. We offer our cultural connections and service learning projects. And for 2016, we're offering something called International Perspectives, which are sort of insights with local people into things like technology, farm industries, lots of different looks at overseas activities and things that students might be interested in for careers or just even personal. Quality-wise, World Strides is more on par with ACIS, so very different from a budget company. But we do offer a lot more customization and a willingness to customize. And of course, all the support and the personalized care we've been talking about before. All right, so I think that just about covers it, everyone. So in closing, I just want to say thank you so much to Val and Mark for sharing your experiences and for looking at, helping us look at the differences between ACIS and other companies. When I worked with teachers directly at ACIS, it was really always a challenge to sort of come up with ways to properly explain the differences between ACIS and budget companies, because so much of what we do is in the care and the service. It's really hard to put a dollar sign on that. But I think your experiences really put the spotlight on how additional cost is really added value, found through the security, confidence, and the time you gain, not just by being centrally located, but time that you would waste maybe getting an additional meal, or the work that you would have to do yourself on the tour because the tour manager maybe isn't that educational quality that you get with ACIS. We really believe in educational travel, and we believe that every moment matters, that pushing the experience from good enough to exceptional is what we do every day. Just to sort of run through, what we do to provide the best possible value, parents, they care about this stuff. And I think you, Mark and Val, you both have really talked so much about how what you care about is what the students are going to get. And that's what the parents want to hear. They want to make sure that they're maximizing the amount of time they have while they're abroad. They want to expose their child to authentic experiences, whether it's a scheduled activity like a cultural connection or just the opportunity to live, eat, and walk among local neighborhoods, right around their hotel and interact with the people they meet. We really want to leave nothing to chance. If there's a service disruption or a problem on the trip, we have a 24-hour service network, and we fix it, and we fix it fast, often, without the students ever even knowing. That's one of the greatest things we do, I think, is that light touch, our ability to be there in the moment, and, we are constantly checking in with you. The tour manager, too. We're in constant contact, 24/7, making sure you're getting the trip you want. Those authentic meals we talked about, of course, really do. They can eat chicken nuggets at home, getting that paella or the tortilla española, eating those funny foods. Those are the memories. That's the stuff the kids will remember, and we really want to create memories for students, the good kind of memories, not the stuck outside the Detroit airport memories. But the kind of memories that last forever, the memories of your tour manager. So, we are on a mission to empower educators to introduce their students to the world beyond the classroom and really inspire the next generation of global citizens. So thank you, Val, so much. Thank you, Mark, for sharing your stories. You guys really are inspiring, and your students are lucky to have you taking them overseas. And thank you so much to our listeners and for all the questions, and we'll see you at our next webinar. Thank you so much.